Pier Andrea. Pier Andrea.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, the first training action cycle of webinars on public engagement ends. This series of meetings was promoted by the University of Sassari as a learning opportunity on public engagement, research, and higher education. Today's webinar addresses the topic, the potential of higher education for the common good, SDGs as the new social contract to leave no one behind. As the UNESCO World Conference on Higher Education approaches, the webinar aims to share visions and ideas on how universities can serve the 2030 Agenda for sustainable development and play an active role in transformative changes and social inclusion. The agenda defines a vision for sustainable development founded on international human rights standards, putting equality and non-discrimination at the center of its efforts. The agenda is based on some key principles, including that of leave no one behind, a goal in which social inclusion is expressed in a framework of collective prosperity. To ensure broader participation by the Italian academic community, this webinar is organized in close collaboration with APEnet, the Italian network of universities and research centers for public engagement. I thank the Professor Andrea for organizing this webinar and the speakers for accepting our invitation. Finally, I thank all of you for your participation and I wish you good work. Enjoy this meeting.
Thank you, Pier Andrea, and thank you for your words. I must also acknowledge the collaboration of the University Network for Sustainability, the Italian University Network for Sustainability, besides that of APEnet, which is has always supported our webinars and will in the near future. I will not speak too long, but I wanted to once again thank our speakers for accepting the invitation, because I know they're all very busy and this is a very important time they are dedicating to us today. So we have, as you know, today Peter Wells from UNESCO, who's chief of the education unit in UNESCO, higher education section, at UNESCO. We have Hilligje van Land, who is Secretary General of the International Association of Universities. Rajesh Tandon, who is a UNESCO Chair on Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility of Higher Education. He shares this chair with Professor Hall from University of Victoria in Canada, and Sandrine Labory, who speaks on behalf of the UNESCO Chair on Education, Growth and Equality at the University of Ferrara. Thank you all for your contribution today, and without further ado, I shall leave the floor to Peter Wells, whom I know will have to leave us in about 20 minutes. So thank you very much for your contribution. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Andrea. Can you hear me okay, everybody? Excellent, thank you. And it's such an honor to be able to join this discussion today. And I do apologize that I can't stay longer than I would have wished for. So allow me just to say maybe a few introductory reflections from UNESCO's side on this theme of higher education for the common good, the SDGs, and a new social contract to leave no one behind, which is, of course, as we all know, embedded in the Education 2030 agenda and specifically SDG 4. I would say these as a couple of opening remarks, that now is the moment, possibly more than ever, to get serious about the Sustainable Development Goals. While each goal has its own targets, they are all cross-cutting. Thus, what we really need is a system requiring a comprehensive, collaborative approach. And this is where universities, higher education institutions play a key role as key spaces for knowledge production, research, and critically, I would say, problem solving. We can't think about solving the SDGs without considering the pertinent role of these institutions. I will come back to this, but the World Conference on Higher Education in Barcelona next May is embracing the concept of a global conversation. What we want to hear is how universities, higher education institutions, but also all stakeholders in higher education can contribute. That means not only universities in higher education institutions, but students, youth, parents, employers, everybody, communities that are at the heart of what higher education stands for. We talk about higher education as a public good. And we all know that universities play a key role in society, be it teaching, educating future workforces, carrying out research, creating cities of knowledge, sites of knowledge, or even feeding society. What we really need to see now is an essential moment in time, or recognize that we are at a turning point, literally a turning point, where it is essential for universities to reaffirm and truly commit to their role in relation to broader society, to strengthen both their community relations, but also their development partnerships with a variety of actors within society, local communities, regional communities, national communities, employers, and employers both in the public and the private sector, and using their innate research capacities to be able to come up with solutions to challenge the status quo, but also to find the problems, to find solutions. The SDG, all 17 SDGs and the 162 targets are essentially a roadmap for research today, regardless of the discipline, social sciences, humanities, natural sciences, every discipline within the higher education community is somehow responsible for delivering on the 162 targets. For this to happen, we need to think critically, and we need universities and young people, students, researchers to take a critical approach and a solutions-based approach. We need critical thinkers for critical thinking. And the higher education institutions and universities are absolutely the best place for this to happen. These are the young minds, young change makers, and also supported by the eminent researchers and scholars of our time. Where do we go from here? It's an international experts group to really prepare a report on how we embed interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approaches to curricula and research at the higher education level, so that we don't work in silos, that it is it's natural sciences here, it's social sciences here, it's humanitism here. We need all of these disciplines to work together in some way. We've commissioned a report which will be published early next year that explains how this can happen. We need collaborative approaches. We need collaboration between institutions. There are 20,000 plus institutions of higher learning around the world these days. We need north-south, south-south, north-north. We need collaboration to share the experiences from different perspectives, to use and embrace indigenous knowledge from cultures around the world, and to put these into place at all levels of education, from early childhood to primary to secondary to higher education, and of course TVET. If we want to talk about having a new social contract that leaves no one behind, this really does imply a re-evaluation of how diverse perspectives and participants are included within higher education settings, both in terms of who these institutions represent, where they are, how they operate, what modalities of learning they provide. SDG 4 talks about lifelong learning. I would challenge university systems today, institutions, to explain to me, what do you think? What do you mean by being a lifelong learning institution? Are you still stuck on learners out of high school who follow the trajectory of bachelor's, master's, doctorate, and then they leave, or they become academics? Or are institutions really open to a lifelong learning institution which serves communities, regardless of their age, regardless of their prior learning, regardless of their prior attainments? This is lifelong learning, and I'm afraid I feel that the higher education, many higher education institutions are lacking in that perspective, that they think that they are still only serving high school leavers with a high school diploma that want to follow the three cycle structure. To do this, we need to partner with other institutions. Universities need to have other content providers, curriculum advisors from all parts of society, be they the communities they serve, the employers that they serve, public and private, the parents and the students. Maybe I will stop there because I have 10 minutes, and therefore there may be some reactions which I would be happy to come back to. So thank you so much again, and I apologize for being so short, and I'm here for another 10 minutes. So back to you, Andres. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for this call to action, and for your somehow provoking words, because this challenges us all in who are working in universities. And I don't know whether there is any question arising from the public who can interact via the chat. I see maybe something. It's Rajesh. Thank you, Rajesh. Thanks you. I don't know if anyone from the public online wants to interact with us, actually, because we like to have more with Peter, and thereafter we shall have the other speakers speaking one after the other and then opening the floor. But I do have a question, because you actually spoke about the necessity of a critical approach to SDGs, and I do believe that there is a large role for university there to actually challenge the present formulation of SDGs, and how do you see this? I mean, how do you already gave us some hints, but it would be interesting to hear more about how you see universities being able to incorporate more diverse ways of beings and doings, more points of view, more desirable futures into SDGs. How can they do that according to your privileged point of view?
Thank you, Andre. And yes, it's a very good question. And from my, it's not just my perspective, from what our International X Group's report is proposing, is that the issue often is that, for example, if you are the only people who can talk about climate change as one of the SDGs, or the only researchers that can talk about clean water are the natural sciences. But why would that be? Why are not the humanities addressing these issues? Why are the humanities not addressing things, areas such as democratic governance? Why are we not addressing equity, equality, and inclusion in higher education? And for example, if I'm a professor of philology, maybe I'm a professor of Italian literature, why am I not allowing my students to not only become, of course, competent and knowledgeable in that field, but also bringing them a sense of civic responsibility when they become graduates of Italian philology? And what's important is that those graduates will be the future of the children at primary or secondary or even higher education level that they are responsible for. So it's important that all graduates, whichever direction they go in, medicine, architecture, teaching, that they are aware of the issues facing our planet, and that they understand that they are responsible for making sure that the future generations understand the problems. And you know what's really interesting now is that children in primary schools, even children in early learning, so 3 to 5 year olds, 5 to 7 year olds, 8 to 12 year olds, 12 to 18 year olds, they are really in tune with the SDGs. They know what's going on. And oftentimes I fear that this passion disappears when they end up in higher education, because higher education directs them into a series of courses, a series of programs and studies that says, you're in economics 101, you will just do this. So everything that their teachers have empowered them, teachers have taught them to be passionate about, disappears when they enter higher education. I fear that that is a global problem, that we somehow lose all of the passion, the energy, and the creativity that pre-higher education gives to young people once they enter into the university or higher education institutions. I should stop there because I could get a little bit too emotional about that. But thank you again, Andrea.
Thank you, Peter. Well, that is great. I mean, putting passion in what we do and getting emotional about it is just something that we all need to keep. Thank you, Peter, and thank you also for your availability to eventually react in chat even after you have to leave. I shall give the floor to Hilligje van Land, who he is Secretary General of the International Association of Universities, and she will surely give us her specific perspective and worldwide perspective once again on these issues. Hilligje, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here. Thank you, Peter, for these passionate introductory words that really set the tone for this important session. Leaving no one behind, absolutely essential, and also looking at how university contributes to that notion. Can I share a quick PowerPoint with you? Would that help? Because sometimes, yeah, is it possible? So let's see if that works. If I go here, I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, because I had some trouble joining. I don't know why, but I believe my Zoom was updating at the same time, which was not very useful. So the potential of higher education for the common good, the SDGs and the new social contract. So very pleased to see that Sassari is taking this and embracing it full-heartedly. As well, very nice to see this connected, of course, to the work of Rajesh and the colleagues there, also through to all the way out to Vancouver. And you will see that what I try to explain is a little bit how universities also can connect better, or already do connect quite well, but can connect even better and foster further attention to this notion of leaving no one behind and how they can do that in cooperation. So I know I have 10 minutes, a little bit less, so I will just time myself so that I don't bother you with being too long about it. So let me start. And there we go. So just a bit of background for those who don't know what the International Association of Universities is. We're based at UNESCO. We have been created in 1950, celebrate 70 years of international higher education cooperation just this year. And this is important as a background because you will see how this translates then in dynamics around 2030 and the SDGs, as all that we do, especially in value-based higher education, relates as well to the very notions that are at the heart of the development at the time of Agenda 2030. So ethics, academic freedom, quality of learning, appreciation of diversity. That's as well what Rajesh already put in the chat, the importance of bringing together the different knowledge systems. So all of that is part and parcel of the identity of the IAU and what brings the University of the World together under the umbrella of the association, and how we then contribute to the work of UNESCO. Peter Wells was alluding to a research project that has been called into life to also inform the upcoming UNESCO World Higher Education Conference 2022, and IAU, together with the International Science Council, was very pleased to provide support into that initiative. So we have members from around the world, not only institutions, but also organizations and affiliates. And there as well, that's very important for the sustainable development, because sustainable development, in order to become a reality in the future, will require that we work across sectors and across players around the world, so that we really bring about the kind of change that is required to inform our society better and develop the kind of world that we wish to live in. And to inform that kind of process, education is the best key to the future, but education at all the different levels. And higher education is one part of a long chain that starts with pre-primary education and goes and continues until a lifelong, also a dynamics that was presented and picked up by Peter. So the IU works on 4 key priority areas: value-based leadership, so how to transform also the notion and understanding of the leadership of everything that is to be addressed throughout the higher education institutions. Internationalization is very important, and then higher education and research for sustainable development and the digital transformation of higher education. All 4 are pillars in the work that we do, yet they're also connected. On higher education research, we do plenty, but there is only one point that I will here stress with you, and it is our work around the new global cluster that we created to engage with the Sustainable Development Goals. We've invited universities from around the world, member of the IAU, to come forward and to accept to lead on any of the SDGs. This means not only to lead on one, yet also to recognize, obviously, the dynamics that are cross-cutting around the world with the other SDGs, and also in full recognition of the need to include the different voices around the world. So where the vignettes are posted, that's where the university is based. So SDG 16, for instance, is led by the University of Nairobi in Kenya. And the University of Nairobi then again works with universities from the 5 different continents. So we really asked the universities to play the game in the beginning, a kind of global puzzle around the SDGs, using the colorful vignettes, not only to put them on the wall, but to translate them into action at the level of teaching, at the level of research, at the level of community engagement, and certainly as well in support of SDG 17, partnership for the goals. So really bringing in the social dimensions through the community-based initiatives, both at teaching, research, and again, in community engagement. SDG 4, which was mentioned before, where the notion of leaving no one behind is embedded best, is led by the University of York in Canada. So the cluster is really to bring about change through networking. The 16 universities are lead, but they then also relate to others, as you can see on this slide, where each university is then building dynamics with others. This slide already is aging because many new universities have come on board and have asked to be involved in the processes, really to build this dynamic of connectivity. What are they all looking at as the basis of their development is this notion of leaving no one behind, to serve everyone at the best of their capacity. Of course, it requires better funding for institutions. It requires mission, it requires opening up to those voices and individuals that have not traditionally gone to higher education, and also to engage in conversations with other kinds of knowledge systems, and thus really to look at how to make this an opportunity for all. Because what we need to look at is really to see how this leaving no one behind can be implemented through the different dynamics within higher education institutions, because it starts very early. You have to prepare students from the primary levels of education in order for them to already dream and have a passion about their own contribution to society in the best possible ways. So here we developed different dynamics already as well around the notion of access, the notion of equitable access, and also the notions of success and equitable success, and how this is related to not only the quality of higher education, but the quality of the societies in which we live. So we looked at the key principles. First, there is a need for access to higher education to be made available to everyone, regardless of ethnicity, gender, economic, social class, age, language, religion, location, disabilities. It seems obvious from the outset, if you look at the vision and mission of universities, that's what it should be. But in reality, it is not always the case, as we all know. And this needs to be put on the wall regularly again. The second one is really to re-emphasize the basis upon which we develop the kind of education that we need for today and for tomorrow, because it is a reality that is underestimated. An educated citizenry is the foundation of social equity, stability, cohesion among nations, full development of national human resources, and the successful participation in the global knowledge economy. So the more people you bring on board the education system from age 1 lifelong, and the better we will be able to change the world in which we live for a better one. So equal access to higher education is by no means a reality. It is, however, a guarantee of success. And there, both the access needs to be secured and also the success strategies accompanied. Because higher education is, in principle, in an ideal world, to be based on the rule of law, on democratic principles, which receive many different definitions around the world, but still the appreciation and true appreciation of cultural diversity and respect for the others. These values are not only required and essential, but they need to be transmitted at all levels of education. Universities develop not only the expertise, the analytical dimensions and power of individuals, it strengthens the institutions and doesn't threaten them. It serves as a model for everything that we do in life, and it allows for the academics coming through the higher education systems to become the active citizens that we require to address and engage with Agenda 2030 to the full. So my last slide, and then we can engage in a conversation further, is these words on the left: higher education matters. And the reason why we need to say this on and on again is that we're going through a huge pandemic that is coming with different crises: a crisis of education, a crisis of society, a crisis of finances, a crisis of ability for to engage with society properly. And if higher education becomes the one tool that will actually be in crisis in the future, because we don't see it as being the tool to the future, we will be in a very difficult position in the years to come, because budget cuts will be necessary. And what is very unfortunate, and what we've seen too often in the past, is that education has been the first sector to be impacted negatively by the financial crisis that countries face. So we have to reiterate the importance of higher education, that it matters, that it needs proper funding, and that it is the place where we'll engage with Agenda 2030 at best. So I would like to leave this here and then engage in a conversation with you on these different dynamics.
Thank you, Hilligje. Great to hear. And I shall leave the floor to Rajesh Tandon, we are going to hear from each of you, as we agreed upon, from Rajesh and from Sandrine, and then we.
Andrea, I think there is a question on the chat. I don't know if you want to take the questions later.
No, we shall leave the questions later. Okay. And we shall have first all speakers present, and then we shall open the floor to questions from myself and from the public. So I shall leave the floor immediately to Rajesh Tandon, UNESCO Chair on CBR, Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility.
Good evening, Andrea. You can't see me because the light in my neighborhood, including in my office, is gone. And may I therefore suggest that by the time our generators warm up, you can invite the fourth speaker so that time is not wasted.
Okay, if Sandrine agrees on this, we can leave the floor to her. Here you go, Rajesh. Yes. What do you say?
It has come now.
I can see.
Okay. I couldn't see my. But if you want to go first, Sandrine.
Stick to our.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Andrea and the team, for organizing this. And we have had already a very thoughtful overview from Peter and Hilligje, describing what I think is a key message, that leave no one behind. And when this statement was placed in front of Sustainable Development Goals, we perhaps did not have the vantage point of the pandemic and its impacts, which has further left many more millions behind. And now we are seeing the impacts of climate change around the world, even though our governments and investors are not convinced about shifting the directions of economy and society. So thank you very much for reminding us that leave no one behind. I'm going to use a short PowerPoint and request my colleague Niharika to upload it if she can, because there is otherwise maybe, there it is. Wonderful. Well, just move on. I'm building on what the previous two speakers have said, that the functions of higher education institutions, the mission, in fact, I would say not just the institution, but the purpose of higher education itself is catalyzing teaching and learning, not just focusing on teaching, knowledge generation, mobilization, not just research, and engaged service with the community in such a way that it empowers them, as opposed to what the old model was called extension, where the academia extended its wisdom and knowledge to the communities. But now we're talking about mutuality in that relationship. So I want to illustrate to you how the work that UNESCO Chair has been doing in building a consortium of knowledge for change around the world is trying to prepare, therefore, the possibility of local contributions on achieving SDGs. So the knowledge for transformative change that UNESCO Chair is focusing on, it focuses on locally defined indicators of sustainability. You have the global map and you have the global indicators, but as Hilligje's PowerPoint was indicating, voluntary reports on global level or national level don't tell you who has been left behind and is still behind, not even visible behind. So local indicators frame locally actionable research questions, which all stakeholders become partners to, because in order to become sustainable, in order to achieve SDGs, actions are needed by governments, by business, by local governments, by communities, by civil society, and academia, educational institutions as well. And then adapt methods that engage stakeholders. If we want stakeholders to own this process, then we have to have them carry a stake in the process. And in order to develop stakes with the partners, we have to nurture trusting relationships. Peter began this conversation by saying partnership. Partnership within higher education institutions, partnership across educational institutions from pre-primary to higher education, but partnership more importantly with other actors and sectors of society whose contribution towards learning and finding solutions to achieve SDGs will be very valuable. So the essence of partnership is relationships of trust. And in order to have a relationship of trust, we need to have a conversation. It is like building any other relationship of trust. In common parlance, we call it love. But unless you have a chat, you can't have love. And unless you invest in having a chat again and again, the love doesn't flourish. That's what trusting relationships are all about. Next slide, please. Okay. So this, many of you have heard about it. Forest Lab and Sassari is one of our hubs, early hubs in 2018. We developed the idea in partnership with the team in Sassari. The Knowledge for Change Global Consortium now has 22 hubs in 14 countries. What these hubs are doing, They are essentially a partnership between the world of higher education on one side and community organization. Community organizations include local governments, local businesses, local community, local civil society. And this partnership then promotes practice of community-based research by focusing on local priorities of SDGs. So some of these partnerships focus on SDG 2, some on 7, some on 30, and I'll give you some examples. But in doing so, they also produce local knowledge, which they then use in their teaching. Because preparing next generation of professionals is the essential task of higher education institutions. And if those professionals are not sensitized and adequately academically prepared to work on SDGs, we will not be able to achieve them even in the next decade. And for that, the professionals need to understand, as both my predecessor speakers have said, beyond their own narrow defines of the discipline. They need to understand what the society needs today, which part of society needs what. And that is where an understanding of leaving no one behind becomes so important for all students and all professionals who come out of training in such institutions. Next slide, please. So let me give you a few more concrete examples. Here is an example from USM, University Science Malaysia hub based in Penang, and they have been looking at, in a way, working on SDG 13 and SDG 17, of course, through partnership with local community. They are looking at how river can be cleaned, maintained, so that it continues to provide source of water and nurturance to local community in one area near them. So this is a knowledge partnership. It brings the knowledge of the higher education institution with the communities, but together they design programs which government in Penang and in this region begins to act upon. So an immediate direct link to SDG 13 and SDG 17 is a part of it. Next slide, please. Lesson 2, a multi-stakeholder approach. When you have, this is a Mizan hub. We are again giving you a Malaysian example. We thought that you're familiar with European examples, so we should give you little Asian examples. And this is where this challenge of peace in a society where different communities live together, but are experiencing conflict and tension due to impacts of the pandemic and climate. You know, climate displaced migration has become a huge issue in many Asian countries, and those especially who live near water, and all traditional cities and ports, and you know, they have always been near the source of water, and it is the impact on water of the climate which is causing this. And when communities have to struggle for limited resources to survive, conflicts become accentuated. And there is a very interesting initiative that Mizan Hub has taken in Kuala Lumpur region, bringing together indigenous leaders, community leaders from different religious groups to have a conversation around combating corruption in society so that resources could be adequately deployed to lead to the needs of the communities. And the third one, please. The third lesson. This is a lesson from Colombia, far away from Colombia, from Latin America. There is another lesson here from the Salish Sea in Victoria. And in both these, indigenous knowledge is being deployed to produce solutions related to SDG 4, quality education, SDG 16, peace and justice in Colombia, for example, and in quality education in the context of the indigenous communities in both Southern Colombia and in Western Canada. So these are some examples of community engaged research and education efforts through the Knowledge for Change Consortium. Next slide, please. These are some of the resources which are all access-free, downloadable, and I hope this PPT will be circulated to all of you who are attending this. Let me just make one closing comment, because it is important to re-emphasize the theme. You can remove this. Yeah, thank you. It's very important to emphasize the theme of this webinar, which is leave no one behind. Several decades ago, nearly 100 years ago, Mahatma Gandhi introduced a concept called Antyodaya. Antyodaya meant, and I will type it in the chat, maybe Niharika will type it in chat. Antyodaya means development, empowerment of the last person. And he implored all the people he worked with that if your investment, if your program, if your scheme, if your policy can help the last person, then it is on the right track. And I think leave no one behind enjoins us to look at who are these last people in our different communities and contexts, who are these who are already being left behind and whose condition has worsened during the pandemic and under the impact of climate. So achieving SDGs with this lens may transform how higher education institutions define their role. It may give them greater opportunity to engage with lifelong learning perspectives with those who are not inside the academia, but outside as well. It may also encourage the students and faculty of higher education institutions to become sensitive to the needs and perspectives of those who are the last, who need Antyodaya. Because let us be frank, it is by and large still the better off sections of our society and economy who enter higher education institutions. And that's why community engagement, lifelong learning perspectives, and engaged research that we are talking about, they enable our students to understand the realities of the last person. And if that happens, I'm confident that when they become professionals and take decisions, be it in business or government, they will actually keep that experience in mind, how the lives of the last person can be improved, can be changed, can be enhanced. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to further conversation. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, dear Rajesh, for these inspiring words. And yes, we will do send us the slides, because we will make them available to all. I remind also participants that we have pointed out and will be further pointing out further material on the side of each organization that you are hereby representing, for UNESCO, for International University Association, and from yourself in Bad Hall, and also from the UNESCO chairs, Italian UNESCO chairs. They'll be making a declaration on for sustainability. So, and I think this will be part of the theme that will be dealt with by Sandrine in her contribution. So, please, Sandrine, the floor is yours on behalf of UNESCO chair education growth and equality.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you all. I am absolutely delighted to take part in this webinar and honored to talk after such prestigious speakers before me, and who made very, very interesting points about the issues which are our object of discussion today. I wish to thank Professor Varjou, who took the initiative for this meeting and organized it in such an effective and thoughtful way. So I will do two things. I will present the UNESCO Chair's declaration, and then I will make some suggestions, concrete suggestions on addressing global challenges at university, or the role of higher education institutions. So the declaration of the Italian UNESCO chairs aims at both reflecting and integrating the priority actions of the UNESCO 2030 roadmap on education for sustainable development, and promoting through their research, teaching and other activities, education, growth and equality. This is particularly important today, given the urgent need for a new paradigm, as the previous speakers have already stressed, a new paradigm for human development in harmony with the planet on which we live. So the UNESCO chairs are convinced of the key role of education and of the reorganization of knowledge in order to face environmental and social challenges, which are interrelated. The approach is to envisage education as a common good and knowledge as a global common good, a common good being a good that does not perish, does not diminish as it is consumed, and that contributes to everybody's well-being if it is shared, if everybody can access to it. So this implies the need for an integrated knowledge to be developed in interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary environments, and co-created knowledge involving the students as experiences presented by the previous speakers shown, involving the students in the exchange and creation of knowledge by developing their problem-solving skills in order to build communities of knowledge and communities of practice. So for this purpose, higher education institutions have a role not only in research and education at higher levels, but also in the training and transmission of knowledge to school teachers and at school level. This challenge-based education must be prepared at all levels of education in order to overall that young generations be able to make complex thinking through the development in their schooling years of competencies to learn to become, as well as through the reflections on key issues such as climate change. UNESCO chairs, therefore, have committed to develop scientific and educative actions that could contribute to reaching the 2030 agenda objectives by proposing new solutions and highlighting the importance of human dignity, of the common goods and common health, and of solidarity and subsidiarity in both individual actions and collective decisions. So for this purpose, the UNESCO chairs address the issue of how to improve the transdisciplinary and transnational approach to education, and they promote research and training environment that is open and based on dialogue. And the UNESCO chairs are also partners in the introduction of the environmental challenge in school and university education. There are a number of concrete actions they have started to take. One is a contribution to the regional regeneration project of the Italian Ministry of Education, which is aimed at regenerating the educative function of schools by rebuilding the link between generations, teaching that development is sustainable if it meets the current generation needs, but without compromising future needs, and as well as learning to live in the world in a new way. So that's what the UNESCO declaration does. Regarding actions by the Italian academic community to support the ambitious objectives of the declaration of the UNESCO chairs, and following the background issues that Andrea gave us, I think there are two important points. One, there is a need for a wide and complete mobilization of the whole academic community. For this purpose, awareness both of the challenges and of the fact that some actions are possible, even at the level of universities, has to be raised. In other words, this resonates what Peter Wells said. It's no longer possible to be closed in one's small world of a particular topic taught for years and years, and very limited research issue that may allow to have regular publications in scientific journals, but do not contribute to resolving the SDGs. So there is a need for awareness of the challenge and openness to interdisciplinary approach to wide and complex thinking, even among university members. Second aspect, I think a key aspect is focusing on challenge-based education by building bridges wherever possible. Bridges are between research and education, involving students in problem solving, in complex thinking, so as to mobilize and develop their creative thinking, their thinking beyond the box as early as possible. Bridges between the missions of the universities. In the last decades, the third mission has been so much stressed that universities no longer talk about the first and second mission, although they are implicit, of course. But it's true that the third mission, the transfer of knowledge to local communities and economies so as to contribute to the socio-economic development of the territory in which they are located, is indeed important. But the first mission of universities is also important, even to, and the three missions are interrelated. So going or favoring one means also favoring the others. So the first mission of universities is to teach and train students so that they become sensible citizens and competent professionals. And I think that in order to reach the ambitious goals that have been mentioned in this conference, an important action is to build bridges between the different missions of the university. So challenge-based education can do that at different levels. I think that levels that have emerged from the what previous speakers have said. I would say level of grand challenges, or a more global level. I would say. So addressing perhaps with the collaboration at global level, international collaboration, the global challenges. For this purpose, it's necessary to develop at each university problem-solving skills, soft skills like communication skills, to be able to collaborate with other people in order to think about and resolve problems. for complex thinking and interdisciplinary thinking. For example, this can be done by interdisciplinary courses and degrees. And there are examples. I have example of master degrees on the green economy, for instance, dealing with environmental protection, where in other European countries, one in Denmark, for instance, which has, so it's an economics course, but has courses in chemistry, in geology, in order for the challenges to be or the problem to be really understood, comprehended, and so addressed to the full. Then there are global challenges or global level and specific challenges at local and regional level. Perhaps these two, the way I have indicated these two levels is not appropriate, but well, I couldn't find another way. Specific challenges, so at local, regional level, that specific problems in firms or social organizations, problems linked to environmental preservation or to the integration of migrants to poverty. This can be done by, well, Rajesh gave different examples of dealing with this, but this can also be done at the local, regional level through challenge-based placements and PhDs. Okay. For instance, in our economics department at the University of Ferrara, which we have a course which is called project work, and where students do a placement in a firm or other organizations in order to address a problem that the organization is facing. So prior to doing the placement, there is a dialogue with the organization. The problem is identified, a sort of a work plan is defined, and the student goes there to collect information, analyze information, do research, and try and provide an answer to the problem. So, in fact, what is important is, and what has been said in this conference, I think, highlights the importance of a constant dialogue with stakeholders in territories at local, regional, national, or international levels. And also, as stressed by both Peter and of course Hilligje, I think, is the collaboration of universities. Universities should not stay in their local territory only, or at least, well, they should interact a lot with their local territory, but also interact a lot with other universities. And so that experiences like the one Rajesh stressed can be exchanged all over the world, and like best practices be transferred everywhere. So thank you very much. I hope I haven't been too long.
Thank you, Sandrine. Thank you for this relevant contribution. Thank you for recalling also what our Ministry of Education is doing to foster the role of education, and I believe in connection with the Ministry of University and Research.
Yes.
May I remind that the chairholder of the chair on behalf of which you are speaking is present Ministry of Education of Italy, Professor Patrizia Bianchi. Well, we have some 20 minutes left to open up the floor, and I think we can. I had prepare myself a few questions for all of you. Some of you have already touched upon them a little bit. So I rather open the floor to any question arising from the public. We already have one in the chat, which was raised before from Francesco Lugli, who was asking, I think it was directed to Hilligje, if I remember well, where Francesco Lugli asks more about displacement status. But he's asking what you were meaning by displacement status. This is a very specific question. Maybe you want to just give a very short reply on this, Hilligje, so that we move on eventually with other questions.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you to the other speakers as well, Rajesh, Sandrine. I very much appreciated the points that you made, and we will take them on board as well and liaise beyond the limits of this webinar as well. I don't think the question was really asked to me, because I didn't talk about displaced people, but maybe to Peter Wells, but yet I think I understand the question. The question is interesting when you think about inclusive approaches to education, because of course there are today more displaced people than ever before, and we will have many more in the future, also due to climate action and climate impacts on our societies. We will see more people fleeing their countries for economic reasons, for wars, for many different reasons. And unfortunately for them, they will have to leave their countries and seek asylum somewhere else. So I believe the question would be about how to integrate them in the higher education or the education systems in the countries where they land. And many initiatives in Europe are being taken. Italy is very strongly involved, and Greece, because that's where, for instance, many of the people arrive when they come to Europe. But many other initiatives are being taken around the world to also address these issues that are so vital for the future of our society. But I think that what Peter maybe would have wished to add, I don't know if he's still with us, is that there is, for instance, these refugee passports that has been developed in Europe for people without papers, without proof of their prior education. So that's one big international initiative that should resonate with many of the difficulties that universities face when they are invited to integrate people coming from abroad without the adequate documentation. And that initiative is European for now, but is moving to the global level also through different new governmental mechanisms at UNESCO. So that's one that I would see. And apart from that, I think that the whole notion of leaving no one behind is definitely to also address this very important issue today of these populations migrating and seeking a life somewhere else. We need to find better ways to include them at the very many different levels. So there are initiatives, but not enough.
Thank you, Hilligje. May I just stick with you on this issue for a little more, because yes, you mentioned Italy. We have this humanitarian corridors initiative, for instance, that is a very interesting one. But these kind of initiatives, they very often come to clash with formalities and all kind of difficulties at administrative level. So this connects with what I wanted to ask you in a more general way as to the capacity, the possibility for university to work out to address these kind of issues in a more agile way. I believe from your point of view, from your privileged position, you can see many examples that you could bring of universities changing to adapt to this situation and adopting institutional solutions to address the difficulty of the multiplicity of the challenges we are facing now.
This is a very large large issue, Andrea. It's not an easy answer that can be given to this very complex issue. But the very topic that you're putting on the table requires for a very strong and engaged multi-stakeholder approach, because universities cannot do this on their own. They need the governments on board. They need the qualification frameworks on board. They need the communities on board. They need social workers. They need the mechanisms to be put in place to actually increase the capacity of universities to accommodate the request for further inclusion of populations coming to countries is really requiring for this multi-stakeholder approach. There's another initiative that we could allude to here, a document that you can find online, is the Global Convention on the Recognition of Higher Education Qualifications. That is a convention that has been adopted by the UNESCO General Conference, has been put on the table and on the agenda again for further discussion and better understanding and explanation at the 41st General Conference of UNESCO just last November. And what we see is that a text has been drafted. It has taken years. And the IU has been very much involved with many other players, in particular also the Council of Europe, when we think Europe. Mm-hmm. And that document exists, yet for governments to then also adopt it is a next step. And that is something that is not fast. And it's good that it's not fast because it requires for real engagement once you adopt it. Mm-hmm. And then the second step will be from adoption to implementation, of course. And from implementation, then to go to the institution. Because as you said, Andrea, there are many barriers that are there which prevent easy inclusion. These barriers, although are necessary, you cannot just open everything to just anything. That's also not possible. So if you break down barriers, let's do it in a very concerted way, in almost, I would say, in an inclusive way where all the players understand what is at stake. So it requires further consultation, explanation, bringing on board all people within an institution, including the administrators, the professors, the professions within, so that the processes are more fluid and they're not imposed. There is this need for always dialogue. So there are many mechanisms that are being developed today. I think they have been crafted with a lot of partnership dynamics, the word that is on the table all through today, and that there is hope for the future to do that better. Of course, we see also that there is a need to step up our action. So there are certain mechanisms that actually cross all boundaries in a faster way. That is the whole process that has been put in place by SAR, for instance, Scholars at Risk, with the dynamics around the integration of scholars at risk from many different countries, especially now today from Afghanistan, but not only. So there are many of these initiatives that exist, and they require probably further communication around it, better explanation for people to understand what are the mechanisms at stake. The APEnet and RUS, when we talk Europe again, specifically, the whole qualification framework dynamics are very much involved in these discussions. And that is where there is, again, this need for better digestion of the opportunities out there for universities to pick them up. So I would say that one of the problems maybe that we face today, especially also in the pandemic, if I may say, is that we're all overloaded with work. So we need time to digest this information. So you have to do this and that and that and that and much more. And today even more, we pivot online, we have to do this. We see with the facility we have now to meet, the number of meetings is exponential. But to really sit and understand these different processes, we also need a bit of time. And that is where I made the case earlier, higher education matters. We need more money money is one tool, but we need more money in order to be able to attract more people with the knowledge that we need to develop the kind of mechanisms required to do what the universities is invited to do. We cannot just assume that we give more work to just a few that are there. So I just wanted to maybe, that's a long-winded response to a quite complex issue that would require an even longer response.
Thank you, Hilligje, because you've been very, very clear and direct on this, albeit a limited time. You gave us very, very important insight on this matter. You know, we have blockages that are institutional and regulative blockages, but we also have difficulties in opening up, in bringing down barriers as far as generating and sharing knowledge is concerned. I mean, we have the institutional side, and we have also the way we in university we conceive and our role and the possibility to produce and to share knowledge. I know Rajesh and Baden and their chair, they're particularly keen into underline the need for multiple epistemologies, for epistemic justice. Can you bring us some word on this issue, which are very connected to the institutional barriers at the same time? So, Rajesh.
I guess this is for Rajesh, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm asking Rajesh.
And maybe what I would say, Rajesh, can you also talk about incentives? We need incentives, recognition.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, this is fascinating. I've been listening carefully to what Hilligje was saying about that other complex issue. This is equally complex, if not. But there are now 2-3 pointers and hooks on which we can explore this. The first hook, of course, that pandemic provided. For the first time in my lifetime, public discourse on science and research began. People started asking, why are you doing this study? Who are you sharing the results with? Who gave you contract to make the vaccine? Whose patent you have got? Why can't it be given to everybody? You know, the pandemic forced a public scrutiny of science and research institutions like it has never done before. And therefore, scientists themselves are beginning, particularly the younger lot, beginning to be more attuned to their responsibilities towards society. Now, once you begin to look at society occasionally outside your lab and the experimental table, then half the problem is resolved, because your sights are on society and not just on your beaker or on your toolbox in the lab. And I must say that this process has really, they have also become sensitized to the politics of scientific evidence, how the knowledge they were producing was being distorted for political reasons around the world. And no particular country had monopoly. It was being done around the world. And in fact, it was being done in those 10 highly scientifically endowed countries of the world, much more than other places. You know, Malawi wasn't doing it, but US, India, UK, Australia, China were doing it. So, you know, it became, it's a hook on which we can now support a conversation that, look, what you saw during the pandemic, can this become a part of the way you function? But at the policy level, and Hilligje also knows quite a bit about it, IAU has been very active. UNESCO's last month passed the recommendation on open science. And the open science recommendation, for the first time, includes multiple epistemologies, knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems, respect for diversity of knowledge systems. So, yes, there is a long way to go for implementation, but there is a policy hook. All our countries are signatories. So country by country, those of us who are interested can take this forward and say, look, can you now respond to this commitment you have made? How can this become operational at the national level? And then taking it to the institutional level. But I think the opportunity for posing this question that there are various forms of knowledge, we need to work together in order to find solutions, not for SDGs alone, but also for the planet itself. 2030 may be over, but 2040 is not far behind. And survival of the planet depends on respecting the diversity of knowledge, taking the best from all, and supporting various actors to converge. Right now, it is the moment. And I think each national level efforts, institutional level efforts would pave the way, because hooks are now available. Let me stop here.
Thank you, Rajesh. We don't have much time left, but I am very much looking forward to Sandrine's contribution. I saw her nodding several times while Hilligje and Rajesh were speaking, so I'm very curious to hear from her, and eventually to sort of help us. There are many people following this webinar also from Italy, so maybe we can try also to bring this conversation within the wider academic community, but eventually, if you wish, of course, Sandrine, bring it over to you called for more collaboration among universities, for instance. So this is a very interesting issue. Please.
Well, you're asking me perhaps a complicated task. I'm not sure, but no, I was nodding because one thing that came to my mind listening to Hilligje and Rajesh is that yes, and probably there is a need for more collaboration and more also knowledge, information exchange. Because I was thinking, and then in the chat also there are always more and more indications of many things that are being done on many aspects of the issues we are dealing with today. I mean, collaborating with the UNESCO chair in Ferrara, of course, I'm directly trying to address how can higher education institutions favor
dell'olio in questa tazzina, Ciccio?
the resolution of somebody has a microphone. Okay. So thinking about how to resolve SDGs, linked with this UNESCO chair, we've done some reflections. I've seen what's being done at UNESCO, but I'm also involved in some, for instance, European Commission, Erasmus Plus, let's say, project. Okay, and there too, I've been talking to colleagues of other European universities, and they are asking the same question, exactly the same question. How can we develop challenge-based education? How can we favor the inclusion of all types of all students, and how can we make students who are the citizens of tomorrow more able to address complex thinking and all these issues. So I think, well, from my part, just I will just, given that the time is time is short now. I would just raise that there is really a need for more exchange of information, collaboration between universities for sure, also on these particular issues, and more globally, I would say.
Thank you, Sandrine. Yes, we are somehow privileged in Europe to have so many instruments to collaborate. I think Horizon Europe is giving us new chances to collaborate, but also the Erasmus Plus instruments like the European University Initiative is a very, very relevant one. We should take more into account. I think there are some experiences that are notably heading at engaged networks of universities and networks that are connected to SDGs. So these are very, very interesting to look at from my point of view. And when we have many more, you are actually giving more ideas, giving me some ideas on how to, this is the first cycle of webinars we've had in this last part of 2021, but we are very eager to start again in 2022, and we will most certainly build on some of the ideas and the insights that you so generously provided us today. So I do believe we will have the chance to keep on this. Hilligje, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I wanted to commend Sandrine on the very nice new phrasing, the challenge-based education. We always talk about problem-based. Challenge is much nicer.
Let's go.
No, but it's true. We have many challenges ahead, but challenges are always to be met with opportunities to engage with the challenges. And so I like that dynamic better. And I think that resonates much better with all the dynamics put forward by Rajesh as well. And this notion that we can actually together find new solutions in a partnership. So I wanted to just highlight that part, because it's also part and parcel of your work, Andrea. Within your chair, within the chairs within Italy, and in Italy and Europe, etc. So I think this is a cascading effect that is very positive, because we're in this together.
Yes, of course, Hilligje, you are right in calling up for incentives and more capacity, providing universities with more capacity to address this, because we perfectly know that engaging our students in challenging education means also providing safe environments to do so effectively, both for our students and for our communities, of course, because we are involving different communities in a transformative approach, which needs to be taken care of through very, very safe environments, so that the partnership can be actually equal and respectful of all, and especially of all the diversities we try to involve in these processes that are very delicate ones. So from my point of view, if I may add my point of view, we would need more resources on the university side, of human resources that are able to manage these complex processes which involve so diverse communities. So not only, as I was asking you before, institutional provisions, but also human resources that are capable to address these kind of complexities that we need to face, both in research and teaching, if we want it to be challenge-based. Okay, thank you. I think this meeting has come to an end. I'm very sad, because this was heating up and bringing very interesting issues on the table, but I do believe we will have the chance to keep this conversation flowing, both through our continuing webinars, but also I know and I do hope that some of the issues we discussed today will also flow into the conversations that will lead us to the March meeting and word appointment that UNESCO is organizing in Barcelona for the World Higher Education Conference. So I'm left with the necessity to thank you very much again, because you gave us your 1 hour and a half of your very precious time, and also you brought some very interesting ideas and thoughts and concepts on the table that we were able to share today. Thank you, and let's keep this conversation going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Have a good day
too.
Bye bye.
Ciao, alla prossima.
Alla prossima. Grazie Hilligje.
Con piacere.
Thank you.
Arrivederci, grazie.
Grazie mille.